Good morning, viewer. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are dissecting an organization that has over 60 years as the unofficial central bank of the global energy market. Yes, that's right. This is the oil market. Now, understanding the organization of the petroleum exporting countries, OPEC, is not just about understanding about oil. It is about understanding why wars are fought, why currencies fluctuate, and why the cost of living from London to New York to Singapore is linked to OPEC. Now, looking at the next slide, what is OPEC? Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Country. Now, to understand OPEC, we have to look at OPEC as an organization of most of the oil producing country in the world. They actually come together, form an organization, and they set the pricing, they set the quotas that can be produced for each of the members country. OPEC represent a fascinating study in collective bargaining. While often viewed through a Western lens as a price fixer or a cartel, but for the oil producing country, it was the first successful attempt at decolonizing natural resources. To understand why OPEC is being formed or was being formed, we have to go back to the early 20th century, a time when the global oil map was essentially a colonial map. So actually, in the past, all the oil resources of all these oil producing countries, despite the fact that they have sovereignty over these oil resources, the actual control actually is in the hand of the Seven Sisters. So before 1960, Western multinational companies dominated the oil industry. These Seven Sisters, including giants we know today like BP, Shell, ExxonMobil, they actually own all these oil resources or oil well in all these oil producing nation. And because of that, they have total control. They own the wells, the pipe, the infrastructure, the refineries, and most importantly, because of all these things, they actually control the pricing. They actually set the pricing, how much need to be paid to the oil producing country. Now, this imbalance of power definitely led to countries like Iran, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia, who were rich in resources but poor in income, receiving only a small portion of that profits. And because of that, the resentment increased, and foreign companies is not, or they don't think their fate should be controlled or in the hand should be controlled by foreign companies who decide how much they're going to earn, especially when the fact that all these oil resources are belong to their own country. Now, back in 1960s, after many years of being under the colonial control of the Western power, there was a meeting in Baghdad in 1960s on the 14th of September. Five nations, which are all oil producing, met in Baghdad, which is in Iran, and these are the five countries: Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela. They come together and they decided to form an organization to decide over oil producing natural resources that their country own. So the goal of setting up OPEC is to regain control, coordinate policies, and increase bargaining power when they talk to oil consuming country or other parties that need oil. Number two, they also wanted to regain economic sovereignty because it was the right of the nation to dictate their own economic destiny rather than rely on other oil major or other foreign powers. If you look at the slide that I've created, you can see that the reason why OPEC was formed are clearly stated in the slide. For example, economic sovereignty, fair revenue distribution, price stability, because they can control, they can increase or reduce the quota, and they also wanted to improve their collective bargaining power. After the formation of OPEC, there was a stage of expansion. And throughout the 1960s and 1970s, more countries from the Middle East, Africa, and South America joined as the oil demand start to increase. Now, let's look at the structure of OPEC or the management of OPEC. How OPEC actually runs the day-to-day operation, how do they coordinate, and where do they located, and all this. So in this slide, I've created a picture of the structure of OPEC. From here, you can see there's a pyramid. At the top is the conference. That's the highest authority whereby the oil minister will meet. And in the middle is the board of governor. And at the bottom are all the secretariat that they will carry out all the instruction and the operation issue. Now, OPEC is headquartered in Vienna, and which is capital of Austria. And OPEC functions through what I mentioned just now, three key bodies, which is the conference. That's the highest authority where oil ministers meet at a fixed schedule to set production quotas. And what do the board of government do? The board of government actually oversee all the operation and the financial matters. And the secretariat conduct research, data analysis, and administration. The core objective of OPEC, or the core objective of the whole OPEC mechanism, is to control or set production quotas. And because of this, OPEC influences the market by manipulating supply of oil production. Now, the rules is if the supply is being lower, it will lead to higher price. And if they increase the supply, then the price will be depressed. So this is the mechanism of the whole OPEC. They actually wanted to ensure that they have direct control of the production quotas to, to influence the price of oil. But there is also some free rider problem because this is one of the OPEC weakness, because some of the smaller members often cheat by producing more than their quota for extra cash, because some countries need more cash. And while Saudi Arabia does the heavy lifting by cutting its own production to keep price stable. Now, going to the next slide, I actually do a recap of the history of the OPEC since the formation in 1960 all the way until now. Of course, I did not mention the exit of UAE, which is one of the latest development for OPEC. But for this slide that I produced, history of OPEC from 1960 to current, you can see what are the stages of development on incident or event that has gone through for OPEC. So you see in 1960s, the formation. Then in 1973, there is a famous oil crisis, which in the next slide I will explain, and followed by price volatility, expansion, more countries join them. And in the year 2016, they include some non-oil producing or some country that produce less oil, not as much as the original members, but they also include them so that they have a better control over the oil prices and oil production. As mentioned, one of the major events that happened after the formation of OPEC was the 1973 oil crisis, which I mentioned in the previous slide. You can see the history of development. So in this slide, I actually will speak a little bit on the oil crisis so that at least to give my viewers some understanding about what happened during the 1973 oil crisis. Now, in October 1973, history changed during the Yom Kippur War, when Egypt and Syria attacked Israel. So during that time, some of the Middle Eastern countries decided to attack Israel. So what happened? In response to the attack, the Western country actually poured in a lot of support for Israel. So Arab members of the OPEC used the oil as a weapon. So what did they do? They actually reduced production and imposed an embargo on countries like the US and the Netherlands, meaning they don't want to sell oil to them, and they actually reduced the production so that to weaken the support to Israel. So what happened then? Of course, oil price shoot up a lot, jumping from 3 US per barrel to nearly 12 US per barrel. So what happened then? The global impact is because of the shortages in petrol, um, there is a lot of social chaos, a lot of social unrest, and it resulted in stagflation because this is oil is being used in transportation in many of the aspect of the economy. So when the oil price surge up 4 times from 3 to 12, then there's a high inflation combined with a stagnant growth because suddenly everybody spend a lot on oil and they don't have enough other purchasing power for other consumption. So because of that crisis, the whole world think that energy security is actually a national security issue, and this led to the creation of International Energy Agency, which is a counterweight to OPEC. So now we bring our attention back to the current stage, which is in early 2026. Now, how many members are there in OPEC? So the answer was 12. That was before UAE announced that they're going to leave OPEC on the 1st May 2026. So after the departure of UAE, there are 11 members left in the OPEC, which is being shown in the chart in the slide that I produced. But again, the UAE exit is not something new because in the year 2019, Qatar also left, and in the year 2024, Angola also left. So, exit from OPEC is not something new. UAE is not the first one. Actually, UAE is the third one. So these are the current membership and the changes in OPEC after the formation in 1960s. The next slide, I actually wanted to expand my discussion briefly on the OPEC membership because I mentioned there are only left 11 members in the OPEC, but actually, if you there are also something called the non-OPEC partners. Um, if you look at the previous chart, the history development in the year 2016, OPEC actually include more countries as non-OPEC partners into the organization. So this is called the OPEC Plus. So they actually add on 10 more countries. So if you include all these non partners, OPEC actually has 21 members after the exit of UAE. Now, why did OPEC wanted to increase more partner? Because in the year 2016, OPEC realized that it is no longer powerful enough to control the global supply of oil to move prices up and down because due to the rise of non-OPEC producers. So there are some other country, even though the production is not high, but they also collectively, this country add up, they also produce a lot of oil, which weaken the OPEC control over the production quotas and oil prices. So what do? They actually form the alliance, they form OPEC Plus, and they include 10 more nations which I've listed in this slide, so you can go through them. And of course, like Russia and Kazakhstan. So together, this whole group, the original members of OPEC plus the non-OPEC partners, in total now control about 50% of the global oil production. Last time it was 40%, now it increased to 50%. And this is the reason why the members of OPEC was being allowed to increase to include some of the non-OPEC partners in the year 2016. Now we have discussed everything about OPEC, the formation, the historical development, the reason why OPEC was formed, and also the evolvement of OPEC since 1960 until today, with additional of new members which are not major oil producing. And also, unfortunately, there are also some exit, which is Qatar in 2019 and Angola in 2024. Now, if we bring to the latest development, if we focus on the latest development of OPEC, we all know that recently on the 28th April 2026, UAE announced that they would be exiting from OPEC on the 1st of May. So we have to understand why UAE is going to exit OPEC. Now, the announcement that the UAE will leave OPEC on 1st of May is actually a watershed moment. Because why? UAE is the third largest producer in the whole group of APEC members. Now, if you look at the chart that I produced, UAE leaves OPEC. Now, from the chart, I actually put down the reason why UAE would like to leave OPEC. Now, there are four reasons. Number one is the production constraint. The UAE has spent billions to reach a capacity of 5 million barrels per day, but the OPEC quotas keep them very restricted, very uh, constrain them from increasing their quota. Number two, the end of oil strategy. The UAE knows that the energy transition is coming with more EV, more solar power, more wind power, even fusion reaction. Their logic is very simple. If the world going to stop using oil in 30 years, we need to sell every drop now we have at the highest volume possible. Number three, UAE is going through economic diversification. They are focusing more on tourism, finance, and technology in order to diversify away from dependent on oil. So their logic is very simple. Since there's still demand for oil, I rather sell more of them now rather than later. Number four, which is also one of the very important one, which is a geopolitical friction. Now, within the members of OPEC, there is actually a cooling relationship and policy disagreement with one of the largest member country, which is Saudi Arabia. Now, what are the impacts of UAE leaving OPEC? There are actually there are four main points. So short term wise, I don't think there will be a lot of impact because the current situation is the global supply in the disruption and high prices of oil. So even if UAE increase the production, short-term impact on the global economy is very limited. But long-term wise, this is actually the beginning signs of a significant weakening of OPEC ability to stabilize prices or control global supply. Now, if UAE can decide to leave, it is only safe to expect that there will be more other nations leaving OPEC in the near future. Now, the third impact of UAE leaving will be increasing market volatility. Now, without all this coordination among the OPEC members, oil prices are likely to fluctuate more widely. Of course, some people might argue that oil importing countries will benefit because if everybody start to produce oil at their own will without listening or opening to OPEC instruction, then the supply of oil will eventually go higher and the price will come down. So on the longer term, despite the market volatility will increase, most likely oil importing country will benefit. The last implication will be fragmentation. Now, the UAE exit actually follow Qatar and Angola. So, like I mentioned before, UAE exit is not something new. So this suggests a trend where national interests now outweigh collective strategy. Now we come to the last slide of today's video. If you look at this slide, I actually mentioned the future of OPEC. Now, despite the fact that OPEC has been around for many years, there are a lot of criticism and challenges towards OPEC as well, or OPEC is facing. Now, for example, in the past, a lot of people accuse OPEC for price manipulation. So they accuse OPEC cause inflation because they accuse them of artificially driving up global inflation and harming the world economy by adjusting the production quota of oil that will ultimately affect the oil prices. So these are all the challenges faced by OPEC. Now, the departure of UAE from OPEC actually bring new challenges to OPEC, and the magnifying glass is now on OPEC, especially if we look at the current development globally. Now, OPEC once dominated the world because of the oil, the very precious resources. So for decades, it shaped prices, politics, and the global economy. But now, actually, with the departure of UAE, we are actually witnessing the sunset of the oil era. So the ongoing challenges of the current era facing OPEC will be, like mentioned in my slide, the shale oil boom in USA. This is also increasing, and it actually created an alternative to the oil production, especially from Middle East and other oil producing country. The rising renewable energy, such as the wind energy, the solar energy, the green energy, all this mean that the global push for net zero carbon emission will reduce the long-term dependence on oil. And also because of the internal division among all the members of the OPEC organization, we can see that the exit of UAE actually magnify the very critical issue facing OPEC, which is national strategies are now taking priority over collective strategies. So in short, as a conclusion, I just want to say in one statement to all my viewers. Now, in the past, OPEC actually controlled the world oil production. But now, today, gradually, the world is entering into a new energy era and moving beyond OPEC. And this is precisely why UAE wanted to exit from OPEC. Okay, so this is the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching. Do subscribe if you like my video and circulate my video to all your friends. See you next video. Bye bye.